Bill Maher is on a roll, and this time he's taking down Whoopi Goldberg with a brutal takedown that's got everyone talking. For years now, Whoopi's been making increasingly cringeworthy statements, and Bill Maher finally had enough. In a recent exchange, Maher took her apart piece by piece, and it's safe to say Whoopi didn't walk away unscathed. So what sparked this latest clash? Well, it all started when Maher made a point about black Americans, particularly those in the working class, focusing on practical issues, things like lower prices, better jobs, and responsible policing, rather than the woke obsession with self-flagellation and identity politics. But Whoopi, ever the defender of the woke agenda, tried to counter Maher's point by mentioning Biden's policies and claiming that Biden's approach had the working class in mind. Maher wasn't having it. He shot back, calling her ideas stupid and exposing the logical gaps in her arguments. It wasn't just a disagreement, it was a verbal evisceration. But Whoopi didn't stop there. She jumped straight into defending Hunter Biden, and the absurd claim that President Biden's "no one is above the law" stance was still valid, even though we all know Hunter's been caught up in a slew of corruption scandals. Maher wasn't about to let that slide. He ripped into her defense of Biden, pointing out how blatant the hypocrisy was. If this were anyone else, he said, the media would be calling for their head on a platter. But because Hunter's part of the elite club, the woke left suddenly turns a blind eye. Now Whoopi, like many in the woke circle, is no stranger to hypocrisy. She loves to preach tolerance, but only when it suits her narrative. And Maher wasn't going to let her get away with defending the indefensible. Instead of engaging in a genuine discussion, Goldberg and her crew on The View often resort to bullying anyone who disagrees with them. They claim to be the moral arbiters of society, but their actions reveal a very different reality. Maher exposed that double standard and laid bare the glaring contradictions in their worldview. The real kicker came when Maher brought up the media's role in all this. He pointed out that the mainstream media, particularly during the 2020 election, worked overtime to bury the Hunter Biden scandal to protect Biden's campaign. They labeled the story as Russian disinformation, without a shred of evidence, and outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post followed suit. Of course, Whoopi eagerly jumped in to defend the media's actions. Maher wasn't having any of it, calling her out for playing defense instead of seeking the truth. He highlighted how the media and the woke left protect their own, while attacking everyone else who dares to step out of line. Now, here's where things really get interesting. Bill Maher didn't just stop at Whoopi and Hunter Biden. He took aim at the woke left in general, calling them out for their utter inability to accept that sometimes the other side wins. Maher pointed out that Donald Trump won in 2016 not because he cheated, but because millions of Americans supported his message. Yet instead of accepting this reality, the left continues to scream about Russian interference, racism, and other excuses. Maher's message is clear. Democracy means sometimes the other side scores, and that's how the system is supposed to work. But the real takeaway here is that the woke left, led by people like Whoopi, has completely lost touch with average Americans. Maher pointed out that black and Hispanic voters are less likely to agree with white progressives on issues like systemic racism or illegal immigration. He argued that the left's increasing embrace of fringe ideas like pushing for biological men to dominate women's sports or rallying behind groups like Hamas has alienated the very voters they need to win. Maher's advice? If the left wants to win in 2028 or 2032, they need to stop pushing fringe ideologies and start focusing on what actually makes sense to everyday people. The woke mob's obsession with moral high ground is alienating a large chunk of the electorate, and if they want to make real change, they need to drop the sanctimony and start connecting with the working class. And in true Bill Maher fashion, he wrapped it all up with a mic drop moment. The woke mob likes to say they speak truth to power, but they've completely lost the ability to speak truth to bullshit. Okay. He nailed it. The woke left has turned into a self-righteous echo chamber where critical thinking is replaced with tribal loyalty. And Bill Maher, as always, isn't afraid to call it out. Maher's take on Whoopi and the woke mob isn't just timely. It's a wake-up call. The hypocrisy and selective outrage are too much to ignore, and Maher's been relentless in exposing it. For anyone tired of one-sided narratives and virtue signaling, Maher's takedowns are a breath of fresh air. In the end, Bill Maher's message is clear. It's time for the woke left to stop lecturing the rest of us and face the reality of the political landscape. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to listen to the voters who aren't wrapped up in the latest activist trend and focus on the issues that actually matter.